There are films that live forever replayed, restored, and remembered, and then there are those that lived only once, shown in a single dark room, to a handful of people, and then erased. In the archives of cinema, whispers remain of movies that were seen in their true form only one time before being recut, censored, or buried. Some vanished because of panic, others because of shame. There were directors who left their own premieres in silence, and studios that ordered films locked away before critics could write a single word. Sometimes, the footage itself was destroyed. Sometimes, it was simply hidden, edited into something safer. But those who were there remember things that no longer exist. Longer scenes, darker endings, moments that changed the meaning of everything. And the question that lingers decades later is always the same. What did they see in that first screening that no one else ever will? This isn't about banned films or lost reels buried by time. It's about movies that were born in full light, then swallowed by the darkness that made them. 15 titles, 15 ghosts of cinema, 15 stories that prove, sometimes, the real version of a film lives only in memory. A Clockwork Orange, 1971, the version Kubrick buried himself. Before it became a cultural lightning rod, A Clockwork Orange existed in a longer, harsher form. Kubrick screened that version once for Warner executives, a cut that lingered on every act of violence, every humiliation, every piece of irony stripped bare. When the lights came up, the silence was suffocating. Kubrick quietly withdrew the film and began trimming it himself. The new version was leaner, more stylized, and more controlled. It was also safer. After a wave of copycat crimes, Kubrick pulled the film from UK theaters entirely. For decades, it could only be seen abroad. The original longer cut, the one only a handful of people ever watched, was never shown again. Some say Kubrick wasn't censored by the studio, he censored himself. He understood something terrible. Sometimes, the truth is too powerful to survive its creator. Alien 3, 1992, the director who lost his own debut. For David Fincher, Alien 3 wasn't a beginning, it was a baptism by fire. The young director delivered a rough cut built on dread and fatalism, the most uncompromising version of the series yet. It was screened once for executives. They hated it. No action, no hope, no crowd-pleasing alien battles, just grief and decay. Fincher was locked out of the editing room. The film was recut without him, scenes removed, characters rewritten, and a new ending shot. The original screening version vanished, existing only in fragments and crew memories. Years later, the assembly cut gave audiences a glimpse of what might have been, but Fincher himself refused to endorse it. He said nothing publicly, because maybe there was nothing left to save. The story of Alien 3 isn't about a monster in space, it's about the monster that lives in every studio boardroom. The Devils, 1971. The film even its studio fears. Few films in history have been fought over like The Devils. Ken Russell's adaptation of real events in 17th century France was never meant to comfort. It was designed to provoke. When the original cut was screened privately for British censors, it was said to be overwhelming, bodies writhing in religious ecstasy, faith dissolving into frenzy. The reaction was instant horror. The BBFC demanded cuts. Warner Brothers demanded more. By the time it reached theaters, the film had been slashed, burned, rewritten, and buried. That first version, seen only once, contained scenes that reframed the entire story as institutional blasphemy. Russell called it the only honest version. The studio called it career suicide. Decades later, campaigns still plead for the release of that uncut film. Warner Brothers refuses, perhaps because even now, the church and the screen remain closer than anyone wants to admit. Gremlins 1984, the Christmas movie that once wasn't. Before it became a family classic, Gremlins was something far nastier. Joe Dante's original cut was grim, a holiday horror drenched in blood. In its first internal screening at Amblin, the Gremlins didn't just cause chaos, they killed the dog, the neighbors. The tone was closer to Alien than E.T. Steven Spielberg watched in silence, then told Dante it was too much. Within days, reshoots began. The violence was scaled back, jokes added, and the entire film reframed as mischievous fun. The original version, screened once, never seen again, has since become an urban legend. Crew members claim it was terrifying, brilliant, and utterly unsellable. It's ironic. The movie that helped invent the PG-13 rating once teetered on the edge of an rated nightmare. Possession, 1981, the film that broke its own audience. Andrzej Żuławski's Possession isn't just horror, it's hysteria captured on film. The original version, shown once at a European festival, lasted nearly half an hour longer than the one most know. It was an endurance test. More screaming, more silence, more time spent watching a marriage decay until it became something inhuman. The screening left viewers shaken. Some applauded, some cried, others left mid-scene. Żuławski called it too much truth. Distributors called it unmarketable. The result, brutal cuts, multiple versions, and a legacy of confusion. The version seen that one night included entire dream passages and religious symbols that made the story feel almost mythic. But that print vanished, surviving only in second-hand memory. Maybe it wasn't the film that broke. Maybe it was the people watching it. Natural Born Killers, 1994, the cut that went too far. Oliver Stone never made Natural Born Killers to glorify murder. He made it to expose the way the media does. But the first version of the film, screened privately for censors and executives, blurred that line beyond recovery. The footage was relentless. Killings choreographed like art, reality spliced with television static, and a prison riot edited like a fever dream. When the lights came up, no one could agree whether it was genius or insanity. The MPAA refused classification. The studio panicked. That full, original cut, screened once and then locked away, became legend. Stone was forced to trim entire sequences and reframe the narrative to tone down the chaos. Even the so-called director's cut, available today, is missing scenes whispered about in rumor, the ones that made the satire too convincing. It wasn't that the film celebrated violence, it was that it showed how easily the audience did. Event Horizon, 1997, the version that looked into hell. Before it became a cult classic, Event Horizon was a film the studio wanted to forget. Paul W.S. Anderson's original cut was over 2 hours long, packed with imagery of unspeakable suffering, visions of a lost crew in what looked like hell itself. When Paramount held the first preview screening, the audience reaction was immediate. Horror, disgust, confusion. Executives demanded massive cuts. Nearly 40 minutes vanished, whole storylines, character arcs, and sequences of cosmic terror. The deleted footage was stored in a salt mine in Transylvania, where it rotted beyond recovery. That early version was seen once, then lost forever. Anderson has since admitted he can't bear to talk about it. It's not just that it was darker, it was closer to madness. The Event Horizon we know is the echo of a film that once dared to look too far beyond the stars. The House That Jack Built, 2018, the film that cleared a room. When Lars von Trier returned to Cannes after years of exile, he came armed with The House That Jack Built, and he knew it would divide the room. The original cut premiered late at night to a packed audience. Within an hour, over 100 people walked out. Some called it a masterpiece of madness, others called it pure sickness. The uncut version was shown only that once. After the uproar, distributors refused to handle it without edits. Von Trier reluctantly trimmed several sequences, softening the violence, but not the intent. Today, the official release runs shorter and cleaner. But those who were there described the original as hypnotic, an essay on creation and cruelty. Von Trier later said, "It was never meant to comfort, it was meant to hurt, and for one night, it did exactly that." RoboCop, 1987. The cut too violent for the censors. Paul Verhoeven didn't just make a sci-fi film, he built a satire disguised as carnage. But when RoboCop was first screened for the MPAA, the violence crossed a line no one expected. Murphy's execution played out in unbroken detail. The shots lingered long enough to feel inhuman. Members of the rating board reportedly turned away from the screen. That one screening sealed its fate. The MPAA labeled it with an X rating reserved for pornography, not political allegory. Verhoeven recut the film again and again, trimming frames until it barely passed with an R. The full, uncut version, the one only that first audience witnessed, has never been released. Even the unrated edition known today is missing several seconds of horror. Preserved only in rumor. Maybe that first version said too much about what society had become, a world that consumes violence but can't bear to look directly at it. The Magnificent Ambersons, 1942. The masterpiece that died in the dark. After Citizen Kane, Orson Welles crafted a film that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The Magnificent Ambersons was a lament, slow, mournful, devastating. When RKO previewed the 131-minute original cut, the response was brutal. Executives found it depressing. Test audiences wanted hope. While Welles was in South America, they recut the film without him, removed 40 minutes, reshot the ending, and burned the original negative. The version shown that night became a legend whispered about by those few who had seen it, a film more personal, more perfect than Kane itself. Only fragments survive stills, memories, and Welles's anger. He called it the greatest loss in cinema. Sometimes, the most painful edits aren't creative decisions, they're erasures. Little Shop of Horrors, 1986. The ending that audiences rejected. When Frank Oz tested Little Shop of Horrors, the film's finale was pure tragedy. Audrey died, Seymour followed. The plant consumed everything. It was faithful to the original stage show, darkly comic, grotesquely poetic. The San Jose audience sat in stunned silence. One woman reportedly whispered, "I can't believe they killed her." Studio executives took note. Within weeks, the ending was rewritten, the tone softened, and a new shoot began. That first screening, however, contained an even longer apocalypse sequence. Miniatures of cities collapsing under vines, the plant grinning as it devoured skyscrapers. That print was destroyed immediately after. A restored version eventually surfaced decades later. But the true test screen cut remains unseen, an artifact of a time when audiences demanded their monsters be defeated. Some stories, it seems, are too honest about how the world really ends. Brazil 1985. The version that was too dark to exist. Terry Gilliam didn't make Brazil to entertain, he made it to disturb. His original cut, shown once at an unauthorized university screening in Los Angeles, ended not in triumph, but in collapse. The hero, Sam Lowry, lost his mind in a fantasy where freedom existed only as delusion. That night, students watched in silence as the credits rolled. Word spread quickly. Gilliam's version was unmarketable, unwatchable, unforgettable. When the studio found out, they locked it away and ordered a new edit with a fake, happy ending. Gilliam fought publicly, buying a full-page ad in Variety, pleading for his film's release. He won, partially. But the version seen in that illicit screening, the one that plunged fully into dystopian despair, was never shown again. It remains one of cinema's great ghosts, a film that glimpsed a future too bleak for the decade that birthed it. The Exorcist III, 1990, the studio that demanded a demon, William Peter Blatty envisioned The Exorcist III as a meditation on guilt, faith, and human evil without any supernatural fireworks. His early cut, screened only for executives, was quiet, psychological, deeply unsettling. When the lights came up, the first question wasn't praise, it was panic. Where's the exorcism? The studio ordered an entirely new ending. A different actor was brought in, entire scenes were reshot. Blatty's film, retitled and restructured, became something he no longer recognized. In 2016, a partial director's cut surfaced, cobbled together from aging VHS workprints. But even that isn't the full original screening version. Large sections are still missing, dialogue gaps, alternate takes, tonal shifts never restored. For years, fans have wondered what that lost film truly felt like. A sequel without spectacle, a horror about faith instead of fear. Maybe that's why it was buried, because it dared to believe horror didn't need a demon to exist. I Am Legend, 2007. The ending audiences couldn't accept. The I Am Legend that reached theaters wasn't the one Will Smith filmed. In the version first screened to select audiences, the story ended in silence, not fire. Neville lived, but not as a hero. He realized the infected weren't monsters, they were survivors protecting their own. The legend wasn't about salvation, it was about fear. Test viewers hated it. The studio panicked. Within weeks, a new ending was shot. Neville dies a martyr, humanity's savior reborn in cliché. The deeper, lonelier message was erased in favor of redemption. That first full-cut tone, pacing, and score intact was seen once, then shelved. Even though an alternate ending was later released on Blu-ray, the original test version, the one that truly captured Matheson's tragic vision, remains hidden. Sometimes, Hollywood doesn't fear failure, it fears meaning. The New York Ripper, 1982. The screening that made an audience revolt. When Lucio Fulci's The New York Ripper unspooled for its first private audience in 1982, the reaction wasn't shock, it was outrage. Even in an era used to grindhouse sleaze, this cut was something else. Raw, unflinching, almost nihilistic. Reports say several people walked out mid-scene, and one distributor called it a film that hates its own viewers. Fulci withdrew the version within days. He trimmed scenes of violence and humiliation until the censors finally relented, but the original print, the one that played that single night, was never seen again. Rumors claim it contained extended sequences that made the cruelty feel personal, deliberate. Fulci insisted he wanted to mirror the misogyny of the culture around him, not celebrate it, but that intent died the moment the projector stopped. Even now, archivists can't locate that lost reel. Some say it was destroyed, others that it still exists in a private Italian collection, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to show it again. Maybe the world never wanted to face what Fulci saw in it.